Water 5, starting off, Super Danganronpa 2.5, Nagito, Komaeda, and the Destroyer of Worlds. This takes place shortly after the events of Danganronpa 2, and specifically takes place in a sort of modified Neo-World program that Hajime, I'm gonna say edited, I don't think he created it fully, like modified from the original version, specifically to recover the dead members of the Despair Boys after they died during the events of Danganronpa 2. This is about Nagito, and this is kind of like inside of his like virtual mind space, where it's a what-if world if Nagito was, instead of being really lucky, he was really unlucky. Interestingly, in the background of part of this episode, you see Makoto and Sayaka, which shows that Nagito was at least vaguely aware of Makoto and Sayaka and their relationship. I don't know what that's about, but I mean, they went to school together, so he probably had eyes. Just an interesting little thing I saw. This is mostly just, and the tragedy didn't happen in this timeline. I'd honestly, the implication is that, like, if Nagito wasn't lucky, the tragedy would have occurred, and I don't think that's accurate, because I don't think Nagito's luck had that big of an effect on the tragedy, considering it was Junko that caused it, and Junko can predict Nagito's luck, so I don't think... I mean, unless Junko's dead, I don't know. But this is inside of his mind space, so it doesn't really matter, and you can't really count anything of this canon. It's kind of like a fan servicey episode. You just see the Despair Boys fucking running around and doing shit, and they're all buddies. Look, it doesn't matter. And then, like, a virtual avatar of Hajime shows up at the end and just starts fucking killing people, which is apparently because the, like, people inside of this mind space have fragments of Nagito, and by doing it, he's trying to reconstruct Nagito's personality, which he does, and at the end, Nagito just wakes up, and Hajime's like, hey, you were the last of the Despair Boys to wake up, which I like to think that the reason Nagito is the last one that woke up is because he's an asshole, and Hajime was okay with leaving him dead the longest. That's what I like to think. But anyway, yeah, it was okay. You're supposed to watch this after all of the Danganronpa 3 anime, but honestly, I think watching it before was definitely the way to go, especially during the events of the latter parts of the series, because I would have been really confused had I not watched this first. But because I'd watched this first, I was like, oh, I totally understand what's happening. So, yeah. Next up, Danganronpa 3, The End of Hope's Peak High School, Despair Arc. So, this is a prequel before even this takes place specifically, it starts off during the Despair Boys, like, start at Hope's Peak, and then continues on into the first year, like the missing year for Danganronpa 1, where the main cast shows up, and it shows how... Like, it shows before the Despair Boys in their class, and, you know, they're chilling out, and they're getting to know each other, and apparently Chicky is there, and she becomes the class rep, and everyone gets attached to her, and they have a teacher who's the ultimate housekeeper, who is fucking awesome, and I love her from word go. She's probably one of my favorite Danganronpa characters already, which is cool, you know, seeing them all fuck around a bit, you know, get to know each other. But then, because this is the Despair arc, when we get into year 2, Junko shows up, and we all know what happens then. Junko fucks everything up, being Junko. It's actually really cool to see Junko work. Usually we just get her after effects, and I said before during the Ultra Despair Girl stream that one of the best things about Junko is that she's almost a better villain when she's dead, because you still see the after effects of her actions, like landmines scattered about that people just keep triggering, and there's no way to stop her. And you can't, like, in the first game, finding out who the criminal was is how you stop her, but in the later games, she's already dead, so it's kind of hopeless. Granted, they still have, like, the mastermind scheme to stop, but it just makes you wonder, how many mines did she lay down? Being one of, like, the smartest characters in the series, the answer could be endless, you know? So it's nice to see Junko work. We find out how she converts the Despair Boys. Apparently she gets, like, the ultimate animator, which is apparently the same thing as the ultimate hypnotist, and she uses, like, his animation technologies to hypnotize people into despair with her brainwashing. Brainwashing was something we already knew Junko could do, but What I find kind of disappointing about this idea is that it implies that Junko converted them, not with like her words or actions, but she converted them just with brainwashing. And I think that kind of takes away from her mystique a little bit. Granted, Junko has all the mystique in the world, but that like little touch, because before, it wasn't, I don't recall them mentioning that it was brainwashing specifically, and it seemed like she just like fucked with everyone's head, So it's disappointing in that regard. I mean, I guess it makes sense, but it also kind of takes away from Junko's credibility, because if she can just brainwash like those people, then are all of the members of Ultimate Despair just brainwashed? Like, was anyone actually seduced to despair like her goal, or was she just mind controlling everyone? I don't know, kind of takes away from her credibility. There's some slow parts of this, but we get to see Hajime turn into Izuru Kamakura. That's kind of cool. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed it, but it definitely wasn't perfect. Oh, and we also see Mukuro. We don't see the fight, but we see the aftermath, and apparently Mukuro can just effortlessly defeat Peko Pekoyama, which is interesting. So yeah, that was the Despair arc. Yeah, good time, actually. I liked it. This is going to be controversial. This is going to be a controversial video, because the anime are not well regarded, and I liked most of them. Alright. Danganronpa 3, The End of Hope's Peak Academy Future Arc. This takes place after the events of Danganronpa 2, so this is the latest part of the timeline. Well, yeah, actually, it is the latest part of the timeline. It's even further than 2.5 in the timeline. And this apparently, the Future Foundation found out that Naegi was trying to reverse brainwash the Despair Boys, and they're like, you're a fucking traitor. And so they call him in, and then a killing game starts, which has like a cool concept to it, kind of, where like who the killer is changes it was sort of implied to change. It kind of does. It was supposed to be like the killer gets active while everyone's knocked out, and they're all wearing these wristbands that inject horrible poison into you. And a lot of these characters hadn't been established. Some of them were like some of the old favorites from Danganronpa 1. Some of them were established in the Despair arc, the last anime. But I should mention the intended way to watch the Future and Despair arc is you're supposed to alternate episodes with going like Despair, Future. I just watched Despair first after watching 2.5, and it worked perfectly well. If you were to watch Despair and then watch 2.5, it might work better. I'm not sure. But anyway, I'm not here to talk about the order you're supposed to be watching these in. But yeah, it's just like cool. You get to see the characters like kind of come together. Like some of the arcs were set up in the Despair arc, and it kind of feels like some of them are completed in this, with like the confectioner and the pharmacist, the guy that the boxer and the housekeeper were like totally into, is a fucking lunatic crazy person who, okay, my one pet peeve with this fucking anime right here is that this guy is a goddamn lunatic, and the second the killing game starts, his immediate reaction is, I gotta kill everyone. That makes no fucking sense. And Makoto comes the closest to calling him out on how little fucking sense this makes, but no one's like, dude, you're doing exactly what the Despair wants by literally murdering everyone. And what's more is that they're told that this is being, like, broadcast to the world. So for some reason, this fucking dumbass actually thinks that people are, like, just watching because assuming his plan works and he kills everyone and he's the only one alive, then the world will have seen the new leader of the Future Foundation murder every other, like, ruling member of the Future Foundation live. I don't know what his plan was. Like, the Future Foundation is fucking dead in the water, which is something they address later at that point. But whatever, man. He loses, so it's fine. Anyway, it's nice. They go around, they investigate. It's Danganronpa-y enough. You get to see the characters go. Surprise appearance from Monica Toa, which they kind of set her up to be a villain. But honestly, I was a little disappointed with what happened to Monica, because she just kind of fucks off into space and gives up. And it feels like all the setup from like Ultra Despair Girls and even like I think it was spread over like 3 or 4 episodes of this season was just like fucking gone. You know, they set her up and she's just, oh, I'm in space. I do appreciate the like change in artistic direction when they cut to the Ultra Despair Girls, Toko and Komaru, where they show the lower angle shots that was prevalent in that game, where you can just see their underwear constantly, and they have the hacking gun that Komaru uses as she just blows like through all of the Monokumas with the appropriately colored beams of energy. It's a cool touch. I appreciate that the art style change. Actually, speaking of the art style change, the blood is fucking red. In this one, in this specific anime, in the Despair arc, the blood is red. And the weird part about that is that blood is pink in Danganronpa until it dries red. And even in the Despair arc, the blood was still pink. But in the future arc, I said Despair arc. In the future arc, though, the blood is red the entire time. And I don't know why. I don't know what the decision for that was. But it's really cool that they have the same like music cues they would have applied in the games that they do for the animes. So overall, I enjoyed it, and it was nice. It was not. I appreciate how Makoto beats Crazy Sword Man, because he just fucking outsmarts him, which just goes to show what I've been saying the whole time, which is that Makoto is secretly one of the smartest characters in the entire fucking series, and everyone's just sleeping on him because of his blind optimism, which even he's aware he's blindly optimistic, and I like that. He's great. Makoto's cool. But yeah, just a fun time. Just a fun time. Alright, that ends us with Danganronpa 3, The End of Hope's Peak Academy, Hope Arc. It's called Arc. It's a single episode. After Animation Boy goes fucking bonkers, I don't know if he goes bonkers in this episode or not. He might have went bonkers at the end of this last season finale. But after he goes fucking bonkers and is like, I'm gonna hypnotize the despair out of people, fucking Byakuya's mind-controlled thugs end up starting to shoot at people, and they're like, oh man, we're fucked. We're gonna brainwash the whole planet. We're all screwed. And that's when Hajime's like, aha, I've brought the Despair Boys. We're gonna save the day. And then they do. And that's cool. And then it just like ends with a declaration from the Despair Boys, and they're like, hey, what's up? We did all of this. The Future Foundation didn't fucking implode from their own stupidity and incompetence. It was actually us, the Despair Boys, that did it, and we're gonna keep doing it because it makes things interesting. Which resolves the issue of people no longer being able to trust the Future Foundation. But an issue that would be created from that I could just see now is that it would tell other remnants of despair, oh shit, you know, the big guns are still out there, they're still active, so there's still hope for despair, you know what I'm saying? Like, it could incentivize more remnants to just start fucking around, but whatever. They fixed the Future Foundation problem, so they can at least oppose those remnants better. And it kind of ends on a happy note, although with a fucking Deus Ex Machina bullshit miracle medicine. But there's the implication that at the end, like, Makoto's the head of Hope's Peak. He's bringing hope to the next generation. And we get the scene that I've been waiting for since Danganronpa 2, where fucking Nagito meets Makoto and just fucking Hope splooshes everywhere, and they have to drag him away because of course they would. It's nice. It's a nice touch. I'm glad we get to see the scene. I almost wish we gotten to see more of the scene, but they could have made a like a longer, more thorough joke about Makoto being the literal idea Nagito has always strived for, but whatever. Yeah, it was just a fun time. Overall, I thought I actually, despite the controversies and everyone saying the animes are terrible, I actually genuinely enjoyed most of them, and they might be some of my favorite parts of the series. Ultra Despair Girls I really enjoyed too, but I liked them better than the games, if I'm being honest. Controversial, but hey, I never claimed to be a Danganronpa fan. I think the games are acceptable enough. But this opens up the pathway for a Danganronpa V3 playthrough, which I'll have to do at some point. But anyway, yeah, I've been Sacrobolic, your envoy of despair. This has been Water 5, Despair Boys for life!